The night unfurled like ink across the sky, and the floating castle drifted through it, suspended among clouds that shimmered with starlight. Lanterns swayed from its terraces, casting ripples of gold over the mist. Beneath one archway, a woman reclined against the side of a dragon, her dark hair spilling over the curve of his gleaming scales. The dragon's breath rose and fell like a tide, slow and steady, warming the pages of the book open in her hands. Her name was Liuyue, Flowing Moon. She read aloud softly, her voice carrying like a song over water. The words shaped the air itself, and with each line faint motes of light lifted from the book, dancing upward until they vanished into the night. The dragon, Saeryn, watched her with one great golden eye, the glow of it reflecting in the silver ink of her pages. "You read as though the stories belong to you," he murmured, his voice deep as thunder, softened by centuries. Liuyue smiled without looking up. "Do they not belong to everyone who loves them?" "Most read to remember," Saeryn said. "You read to create." She closed the book, gazing out toward the drifting horizon. The castle's shadow touched the clouds like a reflection. "Perhaps that's what remembering truly is," she said. "Creation reborn." Saeryn rumbled in quiet agreement. Smoke drifted lazily from his nostrils, curling around her as if it were a veil. For a time, neither spoke. The castle creaked softly, as though it too listened. Liuyue had found Saeryn years ago, sleeping beneath the ruins of an ancient library half swallowed by the sea. His scales had been dim then, his breath shallow. She had read to him every night until his eyes opened once more. Since then, they had lived together in the sky, where time passed differently. She read. He remembered. Each word rekindled something lost. But lately, the books had begun to change. One evening, when Liuyue opened a familiar story, the Ballad of the Sapphire Shore, the words rearranged themselves into new verses she had never written nor read. Her heart trembled. "Saeryn, the book is rewriting itself." The dragon lifted his head, eyes narrowing in thought. "Then the stories have begun to breathe again." "Is that dangerous?" she asked. "Only if you fear what lives," he replied. The next night, she read the altered tale aloud. As her voice filled the air, the words turned to streams of light, swirling upward and coalescing into living forms, figures of sea glass and moonlight, laughing and dancing through the air. Liuyue gasped. "They're alive." "They always were," Saeryn said gently. "Your voice only reminded them how to awaken." The castle trembled softly, its stones humming with a low, musical resonance. From the highest tower, streams of light began to flow downward. Books, scrolls, letters, rising from their shelves to orbit the pair like fireflies. "Saeryn, what's happening?" "The library is remembering," he said. "Your love of stories has set it free." All around them, the floating castles seemed to pulse with heartlight. The clouds below turned golden. Pages fluttered through the air, each bearing fragments of tales. Lovers beneath celestial trees, dragons of rain and starlight, children who walked between dreams. Liuyue stood, the book still open in her hands. "Are they leaving us?" "No," Saeryn said, unfolding his vast wings. "They are returning to the world below, where they belong. What was forgotten is finding its way home." She gazed down at the glowing pages drifting toward the sleeping earth. Then stories will live again among the people?
Yes, Saeryn said. And when they dream, they will dream of us.
As the night deepened, the library settled into a soft stillness. Its vast doors opened to the wind, releasing the last of the luminous tales into the open sky. Liuyue leaned against Saeryn's side, exhausted but radiant. Will we still have stories to read? The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder.
Endless ones, for as long as a single heart listens.
He looked down at her, his golden eye warm and full of ancient affection.
You have given me more than memory, Liuyue.
You have given me meaning. She reached up to touch his scaled cheek. And you've given me a home in the clouds. Above them, the stars shimmered brighter, as though listening. The floating castle rose higher, its towers crowned in light. Days passed into weeks. Travelers on the earth began to see glowing pages fall from the heavens. At first, they mistook them for snowflakes, but snow did not glow, nor hum softly as it drifted down. When the first page landed in the sand of a quiet fishing village, the air filled with the scent of ink and rain, and words began to bloom across its surface. Words no one had ever written. When the fisherman Bao picked it up, the letters shimmered and rearranged into his mother's handwriting. You are more than the tide that carries you. The sea remembers. He stared, trembling. His mother had died when he was a boy, her stories buried with her. Yet here were her words, shining faintly like stars in his calloused hands. That night, he returned to his boat for the first time in years, and sang one of her old sea songs to the horizon. By dawn, the entire bay glowed with thousands of tiny lights, the echoes of other pages resting upon the waves. Far inland, a young painter named June wandered through the mountain markets. For months he had felt hollow, unable to create. But as he climbed a narrow trail, a page brushed against his cheek, like the wing of a moth, and fell at his feet. It was blank, except for a single mark, a faint circle of ink that pulsed like a heartbeat. June hesitated, then tucked it into his sketchbook. That night, by the light of a single candle, he began to draw. Not what he saw, but what he felt. He painted a castle that floated among the stars, a woman with moonlit hair reading beside a dragon of gold and smoke. He didn't know where the image came from, only that his hands moved with purpose. The next morning, the villagers crowded around his canvas in awe. Some swore the stars on it moved when no one was watching. June smiled faintly. "It isn't my painting," he said. "It belongs to the sky." In the city of Hansa, where towers of glass touched the clouds, children gathered in courtyards to play among the falling pages. Each time one touched the ground, it whispered faintly before dissolving into mist. A little girl named Anmei caught one in her hands before it vanished. She pressed it to her heart. And suddenly, the air around her shimmered with the scent of plum blossoms. "Grandfather!" she cried. "It's snowing flowers!" Her grandfather, old and nearly blind, stepped outside. He could not see the blossoms, but he felt them in the air, soft, fragrant, impossible. He smiled for the first time in years. "That is the world remembering its beauty, little one," he said. "Don't ever forget to look up." And still, more pages fell. Some landed in deserts, where they buried themselves beneath the sand, later to rise again as stories told by wandering tribes. Others fell upon cities, slipping through open windows into libraries, where the ink of forgotten manuscripts began to move on its own, rewriting itself with light. One page drifted into a monastery, high on a frozen cliff. The monks gathered around it, reading the single line written in delicate script. "Silence is the beginning of every song." They began to chant that night, a low, resonant tone that carried across the mountains and was heard in distant valleys. And all the while, above them, the floating castle glowed brighter. Liuyue and Saeryn watched from the sky, their home suspended in an endless dawn. The dragon's golden eyes reflected the earth below, seas sparkling with story light, mountains veined with memory, fields whispering poems into the wind. "They have begun to dream again," Saeryn growled softly. Liuyue smiled, her gaze tender. "It's beautiful. I never imagined the stories would return in such ways." "You gave them breath," Saeryn replied. "Each page that falls carries a piece of your voice." "Then," she mused, "perhaps I am scattered among them, in every song and painting, in every dream that stirs." "As all storytellers are," Saeryn said, his great head lowering toward her. "You are not lost in them. You are multiplied." Below in Bao's fishing village, people gathered nightly on the docks, singing old sea ballads reborn from memory. The waves seemed to glow with every note. In the mountains, June's paintings filled the sky with color, whole villages lit by his murals of dragons, moons, and endless libraries among the clouds. And in the cities, children began to tell tales that had never existed before, stories of kindness, courage, and forgotten gods returning home. Even the air seemed different, lighter, more luminous. Dreamers awoke remembering things they had never lived, but somehow knew. One evening, Liuyue sat upon the edge of the castle's highest balcony, her legs dangling over the clouds. "Saeryn," she said softly, "do you ever wonder what it feels like to walk the earth again?" "Sometimes," the dragon admitted. "But here in the sky is silence, and silence is what lets me hear the stories below." She tilted her head. "And me?" "You are the voice that breaks the silence." Her laughter chimed like wind through crystal bells. "Then together, we are a story without end." "Yes," Saeryn rumbled contentedly. "The story and the storyteller, the memory and the dream." One night, when the moon was fullest, Liuyue felt a pull in her chest, a soft, wordless invitation. She closed her eyes and whispered into the wind, "To all who listen, may your dreams remember." Her words rippled outward, unseen but felt. On the earth below, Bao lifted his head from the waves as if hearing her voice. June paused mid-brushstroke. Anmei looked up from her grandfather's lap, smiling without knowing why. At that same moment, Saeryn lifted his wings, scattering golden dust that rained upon the clouds like embers. The entire sky glowed with words, not written, but felt. Love, memory, return. And in the silence that followed, the world exhaled, whole again, awake. The next morning, Liuyue awoke to find new books forming along the castle's shelves, not from her hand, but from the stories that had taken root below. She ran her fingers along their spines, reading their titles aloud. The Fisherman's Song, The Painter's Moon, The Girl and the Falling Blossoms. Her eyes filled with tears. "They're writing back to us," she whispered. Saeryn smiled, a slow, reverent motion of his massive head. "And so the circle turns," he said, "for every story told gives birth to another." Liuyue placed her palm upon his scales, warm beneath her touch. "Then let it never end." "It won't," said the dragon, "as long as hearts remember, and as long as you keep reading." That night, as dawn shimmered beneath the clouds, the woman and dragon continued to read. Below, the world thrummed with songs, paintings, and stories reborn. Above, the floating castle shone like a lantern of eternity, its light rippling outward, connecting every dreamer beneath the same endless sky. And when the wind carried her voice through the stars, even the sleeping earth seemed to whisper back, "We remember." And every night, in the sea of clouds far above, the woman and the dragon read beneath the moon. Sometimes the castle itself joined in, the walls humming softly, the lanterns flickering in rhythm with her words. On one such night, Saeryn spoke again. "Do you know why dragons guard stories?" Liuyue looked up from her book. "Because they are treasure." "Because stories are what teach even dragons how to hope." She smiled and nestled closer to him. "Then we are both students of the same truth." He rumbled softly in agreement. "Read to me again, flowing moon." And she did. Her voice rose and fell like a prayer woven of silk and light, carrying across the vastness. The stars listened, the clouds gathered to hear. The castle's spires glowed until it seemed the whole sky had become a single living lantern. Beneath that light, Saeryn's great eyes closed, not in sleep, but in peace. The hum of his heart was steady, strong. Together, woman and dragon wove a song of words that bridged worlds, between sky and earth, dream and memory. And in that eternal moment, even time itself paused to listen. When the dawn came, the castle still floated high, aglow with golden light. The dragon's wings shimmered like woven sunbeams, and Liuyue's laughter carried like chimes across the morning sky. The stories had returned to the world. but their home remained in the clouds, where a woman and her dragon continued to read, dream, and create. For as Saeryn once told her, stories do not end. They return.
Want to bring the magic of this story home? The poster featured in the video and QPN style merchandise are linked in the description below. Be sure to enjoy our next tale. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to catch our next post. Thanks so much for watching.